And so what we're going to look at here is, I'm just going to review it really quickly, I guess. For the benefit of those who weren't in A&P 1. So what happens is the blood calcium level needs to be maintained within a very narrow range of the what point? Sure. And so when you have an elevated blood calcium level, we would call it hypercalcemia. When you have a depressed blood calcium concentration, I would call it hypocalcemia. So the first one I'm going to deal with is hypercalcemia. Okay? And so what happens, and of course, you guys know when the blood calcium level gets messed up, your nervous system fails to operate correctly, and your muscles can't operate correctly. You guys see? There's probably other stuff as well, but those are the two biggies. And so at this point, my thyroid gland is now going to get involved. Now, the new part of this is, look on your handout, on your general outline. Okay, and we had that little picture of the thyroid gland. Okay, right there. And so what you can see is you got your thyroid glands, you got your follicular cells there. But between those follicles, I've got these little cells that are called the parafollicular cells. Do you guys see that? Okay? It's sort of like the seminiferous tubules. In between the seminiferous tubules, they had those interstitial endocrinocytes. Do you guys remember? They were just sort of tucked in between, in the little spaces between the seminiferous tubules. So what will happen is I'm going to be dealing with those parafollicular cells. Now, the thyroid gland has the parafollicular cells, but don't confuse the parafollicular cells with the parathyroid glands. The parathyroid glands is a separate gland. It's actually 4 sets of a gland that's on the posterior side of the thyroid gland. I've superposed it onto the anterior side just so we can see it. And so what happens is the parafollicular cells, which you see in that diagram there, they begin to secrete this hormone called calcitonin. Okay? Now, you guys remember when you deal with bones, you have these 2 important cell classifications, osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts build bone, osteoclasts break down bone. And in our bodies, both cell types are working at the same time. And so what happens if their activity is the same, I'm maintaining bone density. But if osteoclast activity is greater than osteoblast activity, I'm digesting bone. But if osteoblast activity exceeds osteoclast activity, I'm increasing bone mass and bone density. Do you guys see? So what's going to happen is these hormones are going to start affecting these cells. And so what happens, it inhibits the osteoclast, but it stimulates the osteoblasts, okay, particularly how long they live. They live longer. The result is bone buildup goes at a faster rate, and as I begin to build bone, that calcification process draws calcium out of the bloodstream into the bone. Do you guys see? And I begin the process of bringing the blood calcium level back down to the what point? Sure. The next thing is the effect on the duodenum. In your body, the part of the small intestine that absorbs calcium is the first 8 inches, which is the duodenum. Okay? And what's noteworthy is that in the food that we eat, there is a lot of calcium. In the food we eat, there is a lot of calcium. It's hard to have a calcium deficiency. Okay? And it serves the reason that if I'm overeating, I'm probably getting more calcium than I need. If I'm undereating, I'm probably getting less calcium than I need. And so what it does is one way of adjusting the blood calcium level is just simply to adjust how much we eat. Okay? Eat, and therefore, if I eat less, I'm going to be eating less calcium. And so it is a hypothesis. It's a what, everybody? Yeah, it's a hypothesis. But it decreases appetite, and the result is I'm going to be ingesting less calcium. Okay? So that's good. So number three, so that's number two. Number three, calcitonin also affects your distal convoluted tubules. Your what? Yeah, this is also a new part. You guys remember in the proximal convoluted tubule, that was nutrient reabsorbent, and it was obligatory, it was full blast, it was pedal to the metal, and it was unregulated. You guys see. But you go to the distal convoluted tube, and that's where I begin to regulate. And we dealt with a few things. Well, now we're going to deal with something else, and that is calcium. And so what happens is calcitonin will tell those distal convoluted tubules now to absorb more calcium so it doesn't get lost in the urine. And the result is, since I'm holding on to the urine, I'm not excreting it, that too will help to... I made a mistake. I'm going to have to back up. I made a mistake. Apologize. What calcitonin, it tells the distal convoluted tube is not to absorb it, but to secrete it, to get rid of it. Okay? And so that too is going to bring the blood calcium level back down to the set point. Okay? So that's good. So now, what if it goes below the set point? Well, now what happens is my parafollicular cells secrete less calcitonin, but my parathyroid glands now begin to secrete another hormone called parathyroid hormone. Okay, so both of these hormones are working together, and you never turn one off from the other. They just it moderates. And so what happens in this case is this hormone will stimulate my osteoclasts. Okay, and the result is because of that stimulation, and of course there is, and because of the lack of the calcitonin, bone breakdown exceeds bone buildup. And as I begin to digest and break down the bone, calcium is released into the bloodstream. And the result is I begin the process of bringing blood calcium back up to the set point. Okay? Number two, parathyroid hormone is also going to stimulate your kidneys to produce more vitamin D. Okay? So the kidneys are stimulated to produce more vitamin D. They play a role in that process. We covered that in the integumentary system in A&P 1, if you wanted to recall it. And the result is you need vitamin D in order to absorb calcium. And so the result is my first 8 inches will now begin to absorb. Of course, I'm eating more, but now I'm absorbing it as well. Okay? And then finally, and of course that too is going to help bring the blood calcium back up to the set point. And then finally, it tells those kidney tubules to take any calcium that is entering into the kidneys, and instead of excreting it, to what? To reabsorb it. So I'm going to hold on to the calcium, and that will bring the blood calcium level back up to the set point. Okay? Okay, nice. Note, I'm not using the pituitary gland here. All right, you're going to get out early tonight. How do you like that? Say what?
Miracle.
Yeah, well, we only have, 1, 2, 3, 4 more, and we're done. Okay, and then the next 4 are, the next one's a little bit, it's about probably, yeah, it's not too much. Okay, and then we'll call it a course. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm ready.
Okay, next, adrenal gland. This one's a little complicated.